Welcome to the Depth Dive. This is
Yeah,
where we take the crucial, high-stakes information that's just flooding the international system, and we really try to filter out the noise.
that's right. Our goal is to provide you with a comprehensive understanding, to let you grasp the true implications of events that are, right now, shaping global policy.
And today we have a really dramatic one.
Our mission today is all about a major confrontation. It's really a collision between an alleged, and I mean highly provocative military attack and some very high-stakes international diplomacy.
We're doing a deep dive into all the source material we can find surrounding this claim of a massive, almost unprecedented UAV attack.
Right, an unmanned aerial vehicle attack. And the target was, allegedly, Russian President Vladimir Putin's private residence in Valdai.
That's the absolute core of the conflict we are dissecting for you today. On one side, you have Russia. They're presenting this claim of 91 Ukrainian drones targeting what is, I think you could argue, one of the most secure and secret locations in the entire world.
And on the other side, an instant response from Ukraine, calling the entire story a complete fabrication.
So we've synthesized reports from a whole range of sources, including Ukrainska Pravda, Al Jazeera, PBS NewsHour, and the UNN. We're focusing really intensely on the intelligence assessments, the local reports from the ground, and the extremely suspicious timing of this whole allegation.
The timing is not incidental here. You could say the timing is the entire point.
I think so.
This deep dive is really designed to bring you absolute clarity on a narrative that was, I think, deliberately shrouded in the fog of war. It's about understanding not just the specific details Russia claimed,
Right.
but really analyzing how governments strategically use this kind of dramatized information. It doesn't matter if it's true, exaggerated, or, just outright invented.
It's about the effect.
It's about the effect it's used to shape global diplomatic outcomes, especially when billions of dollars in aid and the future of peace are on the table, being actively negotiated.
Okay, let's unpack this. I think the best place to start is by establishing the official Russian narrative, just laying out exactly what they claimed, and then we can immediately look at the massive evidence gap that emerged right away.
A gap that, as you said, ultimately just torpedoed their own story.
Let's get into it.
So the claim was launched from the highest possible diplomatic platform. It came directly from Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
Okay, so this isn't some mid-level spokesperson. This is Russia's top diplomat.
Exactly. He alleged that Ukraine had struck Vladimir Putin's private residence. The place is known as Dolgy Borody, and it's located in the Novgorod Oblast.
And he gave a specific time frame for this alleged attack.
He did. He said it was on the night of December 28th to the 29th.
And the sheer scale of what Lavrov claimed, that's really what makes this so significant. I mean, we're not talking about a couple of commercial drones here.
No, not at all. The claim was for a coordinated strike using 91 attack UAVs. 91. I mean, think about that. That would represent a massive, logistically complex military operation. It would require extensive coordination, a huge amount of resources from the Ukrainian side to even attempt.
It's a staggering number. And what was the outcome, according to Lavrov?
Well, according to his statements, it was a total success for Russia's air defense. He claimed they destroyed every single one of those 91 drones.
Every single one.
Every single one. And they went into, meticulous detail about the clean breakdown of the intercepts. If you believe their numbers, it sounds like a textbook air defense victory.
Okay, so what was that breakdown?
They claimed 49 were shot down over the Bryansk region, one over the Smolensk region,
Okay.
and then the critical number, 41, intercepted specifically over the Novgorod region.
Right over the target area.
That places the air battle right above the Valdai residence itself.
So if this enormous military operation was successfully repelled, why did Lavrov immediately treat it not as, a defensive victory to be celebrated, but as a justification for escalation? What was the diplomatic warning shot here?
That's the crucial question. Lavrov did not waste a single second moving the narrative from defense to offense. He was incredibly explicit about the strategic fallout.
What did he say?
He warned that Russia's negotiating position would be, and this is a direct quote, fundamentally revised as a direct result of this attack.
So a direct link between the alleged attack and the peace talks.
A direct link. And furthermore, he stated unequivocally that the targets for retaliatory strikes and the timing of their implementation by the Russian armed forces had already been determined.
Wow.
So the claim wasn't used to inform. It was used to threaten a dramatic escalation of the conflict.
And this is where the information war gets really, really complex. When a government makes such an explosive claim, an attempted assassination with 91 drones, you have to be prepared to present overwhelming, irrefutable proof,
You'd think so.
especially to the international community. Yet the Kremlin, they deliberately chose not to.
They absolutely refused. It was stunning. When journalists pressed the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, directly on this.
They asked him for evidence, wreckage, photos.
Yes. They asked if Russian authorities would provide any material evidence of the attempted attack photos, of wreckage, video, telemetry data, anything. His response was, well, it was very telling.
What was it?
He called the request for proof an insane statement.
An insane statement. That's an extraordinary way to try and circumvent the burden of proof. I mean, this is an allegation that directly impacts global security, global peace negotiations.
It is.
How does Peskov strategically calculate that refusing to provide evidence is somehow safer or more effective than, say, providing fabricated evidence that could be debunked?
It's a key tactic in information warfare, and we see it time and again. Peskov explicitly urged people to, quote, take the Kremlin's word for it.
Just trust us?
Just trust us. By refusing to provide any evidence, they avoid the possibility of that evidence being torn apart by signals intelligence, by satellite imagery, or by forensic analysis from the West.
So they protect themselves from being proven liars.
Exactly. The strategy is to establish the claim firmly enough in the minds of international policymakers and the media so that the denial of proof becomes secondary to the dramatic impact of the claim itself. They traded credibility for immediate shock value.
And what was the specific strategic goal of this alleged terrorist act, according to Peskov? Why launch this narrative at this specific moment?
Peskov framed it very clearly. He called it a terrorist act aimed directly at sabotaging a high-level diplomatic process.
So derailing the peace talks.
Precisely. He claimed the goal was to actively disrupt the negotiation process between the U.S. and Ukraine. And critically, he claimed it was aimed against Putin and against Trump.
Against both of them.
Yes, implying that the two leaders were moving toward a peace agreement that somebody, in this case Ukraine, needed to sabotage. The narrative was tailored perfectly for global consumption, a dramatic last-ditch attempt by Ukraine to prevent peace.
This entire story seems so perfectly designed for external consumption, for the media, for other world leaders.
Yeah.
But how did it hold up to the harsh reality on the ground, specifically in the Valdai area, where this massive air battle allegedly took place?
And that is where the Russian narrative completely and utterly fails the plausibility test.
What did the reporting find?
The Moscow Times, citing reports from an independent outlet called Musem Obyaznit, which translates to, we can provide an explanation, they conducted a detailed reality check.
On the ground in Valdai.
On the ground. They interviewed no fewer than 14 residents of Valdai, which is the town closest to the private residence.
And Valdai, for context for you listening, is a small town. It's about 14,000 people. The residence itself, Dolgi Borodi, is separate from the town, located on, I think, an island or a peninsula within Lake Valdai.
That's right. It's an area where locals would absolutely 100% notice something unusual happening.
So what did they say? What did the 14 residents report?
A total and complete lack of sensory evidence. It was a blackout. They told reporters that they heard, quote, neither buzzing nor explosions on the night of this alleged battle involving 91 drones and air defense missiles.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. Furthermore, they all confirmed they did not receive the usual SMS alerts that are standard operating procedure when an actual air threat is identified and intercepted in their area.
That's a huge tell. But just thinking about the physics of it, if 41 separate attack drones were intercepted by powerful surface-to-air missiles over a small, quiet regional area like Novgorod, I mean, the noise pollution alone would have been tremendous.
It would have been deafening.
We'd expect massive sonic booms, debris fields, public panic. The fact that multiple residents reported dead silence, that's just devastating to the Kremlin's narrative.
It is. And one local source even pointed out the logistical absurdity of it. He said if something of this scale had actually happened, it would have been the single topic of discussion in the town square the next day.
The only thing people would be talking about.
The only thing. The lack of conversation about a purported war in the sky was cited, ironically, as the strongest proof that nothing happened.
That's incredible.
And they also noted that when Putin is actually staying at the residence, the presence of his operational security is unmistakable. There's this constant noise of patrolling helicopters. It's a dead giveaway. The lack of that, combined with the silence regarding the air battle, just confirmed the local implausibility of the whole story.
So the demand from the Kremlin to simply take our word for it was immediately and totally undermined by the witnesses who were closest to the alleged event. Okay, let's pivot to Ukraine's response, which was, as you said, immediate and equally forceful.
President Zelensky's denial was absolute. He didn't mince words. He labeled the Russian claim another lie by Russia and a complete fabrication.
And did he connect it to the diplomatic track?
He did immediately. He directly connected the timing of this lie to the preceding diplomatic steps, specifically his meeting with Donald Trump.
So he saw this entirely as a function of the negotiations moving forward?
Yes. He argued that if there is diplomatic progress and no quarrel between America and Ukraine, meaning if the U.S. remains committed to aid and sanctions, then that is a failure for them, meaning the Russians.
So he's saying they're afraid of progress.
He was convinced that Russia, because they don't want to end this war, was actively looking for a pretext, any pretext, to disrupt the diplomatic efforts and justify a military escalation.
And what about his top diplomat? Did the foreign minister weigh in?
Yes, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andrei Sybiha followed up with a very clear diplomatic framing of the claim. He called it a pretext.
A pretext for what, specifically?
Sybiha said the entire incident was an effort to fabricate a false justification for further Russian missile and drone attacks on Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. His stated objective was clear: to undermine and impede the peace process.
And did he mention the lack of evidence?
He did. He then noted the key factor we just discussed. Russia hadn't provided any plausible evidence almost a full day later, which, in his view, confirmed definitively that, quote, no such attack happened.
And Zelenskyy even took that analysis a step further, right? He suggested the announcement wasn't just about diplomatic disruption, but maybe preparation for a specific type of retaliatory military strike on Ukraine's government.
That's a crucial piece of forward-looking analysis from Kiev. Zelenskyy expressed a real conviction that Russia was, quote, simply preparing the ground to strike the Ukrainian capital and probably government buildings at that.
Did he cite a reason for that specific fear?
He did. He cited the precedent of a previous Russian missile attack on the Cabinet of Ministers building back in September. So, given Lavrov's earlier threats about selecting appropriate targets, Kiev read the Valdai claim as a direct, if highly dramatized, justification for future terrorism against government facilities in Kiev.
Okay, so just to recap where we are, we have a massive, very specific and completely unverified claim from Russia. We have a total lack of evidence on the ground. And we have a swift, comprehensive denial from Ukraine, who immediately interpreted the whole thing as a pretext for escalation. So now, let's zoom out a bit and analyze the significance of the target itself. Why Valdai?
To truly grasp the gravity of the Russian allegation, you have to appreciate the political and the physical significance of the Valdai residence. Dolgi Borodi is not just some vacation spot.
Right.
It is one of Putin's 4 known official or, highly secret residences, along with the Kremlin in Moscow, Novo-Ogaryovo in the Moscow Oblast, and Bokhorov-Ruchi down in Sochi.
And these locations, they really operate outside of standard public scrutiny. The sources we looked at all indicate there's an exceptional, very deliberate layer of secrecy surrounding these sites.
Absolutely. The extent of this secrecy and the immense infrastructure required to maintain Putin's isolation was really highlighted by that 2021 investigation by the Anti-Corruption Foundation.
What did that report find?
That report exposed the intricate details of the Valdai property. It noted it's a massive complex, reportedly 75,000 square feet on 370 acres of lakeside property, with sprawling security and alleged private accommodations for members of his very secretive family.
The idea then that this site, which is meant to be the very definition of impenetrable security, was successfully approached by 91 coordinated drones, even if they were all intercepted, it just raises profound questions about the competence of Russia's security apparatus.
And that profound security question is exactly why the fabrication claim is so plausible. The infrastructure built to protect these sites goes so far beyond just fences and guards.
What else is there?
The investigative media outlet ProAct reported in 2023 on the existence of a secret railway line.
A secret railway?
The secret railway line, and a network of specialized high-security stations built solely for Putin's private use, leading directly to his residences. This just illustrates the massive state investment in ensuring his secure travel and, crucially, his isolation from any potential threats.
A private railway network just for the president. That is a powerful symbol of isolation and the lengths they've gone to prevent any breach of security or privacy. But let's talk about the hard security measures, the military-grade hardware deployed there.
Right. To appreciate the sheer improbability of 91 drones reaching the vicinity of Valdai undetected, you have to understand the kind of security they deploy. We've confirmed examples from his other residences, like the installation of the Pantsir S-1 surface-to-air missile and gun system.
Where was that one installed?
That was installed near his Sochi residence, Krasnaya Polyana, back in April of 2023.
Okay, let's unpack that specific piece of hardware for a second. A Pantsir S-1 isn't just a basic surface-to-air missile system. It's a mobile, highly specialized counter-air threat system. What does it bring to the table in terms of layered defense that makes this 91 drone claim seem so, well, logistically absurd?
The Pantsir S-1 is the ultimate point defense weapon. It's designed specifically to deal with saturation attacks, which is exactly what a 91 drone swarm would represent.
It's a dual system, right?
It's a combined missile and gun system. It uses surface-to-air missiles for the higher altitude, longer-range interceptions. But critically, it also has twin 30mm automatic cannons for close-in saturation fire against targets that slip through that outer perimeter, things like cruise missiles and small, fast UAVs.
So it's literally designed to just saturate the sky with fire and shrapnel to guarantee nothing gets through.
Exactly. Its sophisticated radar is incredibly quick at detecting and tracking small objects, and its reaction time is minimal. Given the immense resources poured into the Valdai infrastructure, it is a near certainty that multiple layers of highly professional, specialized protection, including systems like the Pantsir S-1, would be deployed there.
And that just brings us back to the local reports.
It does. The claim that 41 drones were intercepted right above Valdai suggests a massive, sustained air battle that, if it were true, should have left widespread debris and a clear, unavoidable sensory experience for the locals. The local silence directly contradicts the known capability of the systems Russia claims to operate.
So the level of security required to protect this site, the secret rail lines, the Pantsir systems, the sophisticated radar, it all just contrasts so violently with the total lack of sensory evidence of a major air battle.
That contrast really is the story. But we also have to contextualize this claim within a history of alleged targeting, and maybe more importantly, a history of Russian anxiety regarding Ukrainian drone capabilities. This isn't the first time Russia has cried foul over a high-profile target.
Can you walk us through some of the precedents for these kinds of high-profile claims?
There have been several, and they seem designed to constantly reinforce this narrative of an existential threat. Most famously, Russia alleged drone attacks on the Kremlin itself, Putin's main official workplace, in May of 2023 and then again in December of 2024.
And Ukraine's response?
In both instances, Kyiv denied any involvement. So this established a very clear pattern. Russia alleges a direct, high-value, dramatic attack. Ukraine denies it, and the claim is then used to mobilize domestic and international opinion.
And the sources we reviewed provide an incredibly revealing consequence of this anxiety, the actual physical demolition of one of Putin's high-value assets. This isn't just about PR. This is about real fear translating into physical action.
That detail is deeply significant. It demonstrates that the threat is taken seriously internally, whether a specific attack was successful or not. In October of 2024, the main building at Putin's residence in Sochi was demolished.
Demolished. Why?
The reporting indicated this was done because Putin had become, quote, afraid to visit the resort following Ukrainian drone attacks.
That demolishment is critical. It shows that the fear of Ukrainian drone capability is credible enough to provoke real, physical, and expensive actions from the Russian security state. It lends weight to the motive for this current claim. It makes the threat narrative against Valdai seem plausible, tapping into a pre-existing anxiety, even if the evidence for this specific event is totally non-existent.
Exactly. The history of anxiety serves as narrative support. By choosing Valdai, which is secretive and high value, Russia maximized the perception of vulnerability and existential threat, and this fed directly into their stated goal of justifying a revision of their negotiating position with the West.
It changes the stakes.
Completely. An attack on a secret residence elevates the claim from a simple military strike to an attempted political assassination, which has maximum diplomatic impact when you are trying to derail peace talks.
It's a very calculated piece of psychological operations, especially when it's timed so perfectly to interfere with global diplomacy. And that is the perfect segue into the diplomatic chessboard.
The timing is not a coincidence. It is the primary driver of this entire alleged event. The sources we looked at repeatedly emphasized that the alleged drone strike happened practically immediately after critical high-level talks.
Specifically, the talks in Florida between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy at Mar-a-Lago. This was a moment of, well, significant optimism, with both leaders suggesting a peace deal was close.
And Zelenskyy had literally just departed for those talks on a plan to halt the full-scale invasion.
So Russia drops this 91 drone attack narrative precisely when the momentum is swinging toward a high-profile diplomatic solution, one championed by the U.S. The goal was clearly to disrupt that momentum by changing the narrative from Ukraine seeks peace to Ukraine attempts high-level terrorism.
Yeah, it had an impact.
What was that initial global reaction? Because the sources show that the reaction was split, with some key non-Western allies of Russia immediately accepting the claim.
The initial reaction was very concerning for the West because the information operation had immediate significant traction.
Mm.
We saw President Trump's initial reaction. He told reporters he learned about the attack from President Putin
From
directly.
Putin himself.
From Putin himself.
Mhm.
And he seemed to accept the Russian account without verifying any facts.
What did Trump's comments reveal about that initial acceptance?
He stated he was very angry about it. And he added, "It's one thing to be offensive. It's another thing to attack his house. It's not the right time to do any of that." By categorizing it as a confirmed attack, he immediately bought into the Russian frame of Ukrainian aggression.
And that drew criticism.
It drew immediate and intense criticism, even from within his own party.
The sources highlight Congressman Don Bacon's reaction, which seemed to summarize the concern perfectly.
Yes, Bacon criticized Trump for accepting the account without any assessment of the facts, stating explicitly that, quote, "Putin is a well-known, bold-faced liar." This immediate internal friction in Washington was exactly what Moscow was hoping to achieve. Sow doubt about Ukraine's intentions among its most important allies.
But let's dig into the global support for the Russian narrative. The sources show public condemnations from the UAE Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Why did Moscow's narrative gain such immediate traction with these specific geopolitically important nations?
That really reveals that the target audience for this information operation wasn't just the West. For nations like India and the UAE, who often attempt to maintain a non-aligned, an equidistant stance between Washington and Moscow.
They play both sides.
They try to. The Russian narrative provided an immediate, clean justification for condemning Ukraine. The claim of targeting a head of state's residence elevates the act from a military engagement to terrorism. It allows these countries to take a strong moral stance against political violence without having to condemn Russia's invasion itself.
So Moscow successfully created an atmosphere of international moral outrage based purely on an unverified claim, causing geopolitical maneuvering in real time. But then came the crucial turning point. The U.S. intelligence community stepped in.
This is where signals intelligence and analytical leverage really counteracted the disinformation campaign. A key U.S. official confirmed to PBS NewsHour that the CIA had formally assessed that Ukraine was not targeting Putin's residence.
And this conclusion was delivered to the highest level of U.S. leadership. Who delivered that news to President Trump, and why did he accept it when he had previously expressed skepticism about the intelligence community?
The report indicated that the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, reportedly briefed President Trump personally on this definitive conclusion. The fact that the CIA could definitively convince a skeptical president suggests that the evidence they had was not just circumstantial, but derived from highly sensitive, convincing intelligence.
What was the logical basis for the CIA's rejection of the story? I mean, how does U.S. signals intelligence differentiate between a missile trajectory aimed at a defense plant versus one aimed at a private residence located in the same general region?
That's the analytical leverage the U.S. possesses. They would have used sophisticated satellite monitoring and ground sensors to track the flight paths of the drones and, crucially, the trajectory of the Russian interceptor missiles.
So they can see where things are going.
They can. Angela Stent, a former national intelligence officer for Russia, analyzed this, noting that U.S. sensors likely looked very carefully at the drone flight paths. If 91 drones were targeted at one single structure, the trajectory data would be very tight, and it would be aimed directly at the coordinates of that residence.
But if they were targeting military industries in the area, the flight path would be wider, aimed at specific known industrial complexes.
Exactly. Her conclusion, which mirrored the CIA's, was that while there were likely Ukrainian drones in the Novgorod area, they were targeting defense-related industries. And this aligns perfectly with known Ukrainian military strategy.
Are there defense-related targets near Valdai? I mean, is that a plausible strategic objective for Ukraine?
Absolutely. The Novgorod region is home to several major defense-related industries. And crucially, this includes drone production facilities that feed the Russian war machine.
So they would be targeting the source of the weapons being used against them.
Targeting military industrial capacity is a highly logical military-focused objective. It's much more logical than a risky, high-profile assassination attempt that could lead to extreme retaliation. The intelligence determined the objective was infrastructure, not a person.
And the immediate, undeniable evidence of this intelligence briefing was Trump's public reversal. It was a clear sign the Russian narrative had been comprehensively rejected at the highest levels.
It was a total 180. Following the briefing, Trump posted a story suggesting he now fully agreed with the European stance. The headline he chose to post stated, "Russia is the one standing in the way of peace."
Wow.
This reversal effectively demolished the narrative that Putin had spent so much diplomatic capital trying to implant just days earlier.
And this stance aligned perfectly with European leaders. What was their unified conclusion regarding the drone claim? It seems like there was a transatlantic consensus against the Russian deception.
Senior European officials were unified and highly skeptical from the very start. They confirmed to PBS NewsHour that they had concluded the claim was a false flag, and 100% lie, and a deliberate distraction.
100% lie.
That's the quote. A French official emphasized their intelligence saw no credible evidence whatsoever. And the top EU diplomat, Kaja Kallas, confirmed the consensus that Moscow's aim was to derail real progress toward peace by Ukraine and its Western partners.
So the diplomatic chessboard was just completely turned over. Russia threw this high-impact deception into the middle of negotiations, but the deception was quickly undermined by the combination of physical evidence, or the lack of it, and signals intelligence.
That swift, authoritative counter-narrative from the intelligence community is why the story died almost as quickly as it arose. But let's step back for a second. Even if the drone attack was fabricated, were the peace talks actually viable to begin with?
That's the deeper analytical question, isn't it? Was there anything meaningful for Russia to actually derail?
The analysts we looked at are deeply skeptical that any real sustainable progress was being made. This was primarily because of profound, fundamental disagreements on core territorial issues.
Who were some of those analysts?
Marina Miron, a respected analyst, stated, "I don't think there's anything to derail at this point, due to these deep structural disagreements."
And that skepticism is reinforced by Zelensky's own stated red lines, the absolute non-negotiables he outlined just before he met with Trump.
Zelenskyy was absolutely clear about his primary red line, and that was territorial integrity. He said Ukraine will not recognize anything under any circumstances legally regarding territorial changes.
And that directly contradicted some of the reports that Trump's peace plan might involve Ukraine ceding large amounts of occupied land.
It did. And he cited two other areas of absolute non-negotiation.
What were they?
The status of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, ZAES, which is the largest in Europe and currently occupied by Russia, and the demand for strong, ironclad security guarantees that go far beyond any previous agreements.
And he also mentioned something about the constitutional process, right?
He did. He stressed the constitutional path for any territorial decision would require a referendum or a legislative change, which, in his words, cannot happen under the conditions we live in today, meaning, well, under Russian occupation.
So given those firm public red lines, no territorial concessions, retention of the nuclear plant, a comprehensive peace deal was likely always a very distant prospect. So if the talks were basically stalled anyway, what does the strategic interpretation conclude was Moscow's real objective in making this drone claim?
Mikhail Alexeyev summarized Moscow's objective with a chilling clarity. He suggested that Moscow's goal wasn't to end or derail the talks completely, but to keep them going as a cover and an enabler of continuing Russian brutal invasion.
So the talks themselves provide diplomatic cover while the war just continues unabated.
That's the crucial distinction, using diplomacy as a shield for continued military action.
So the drone claim was aimed at someone specific.
The specific claim of the alleged attack, therefore, was aimed at the U.S. side and at President Trump specifically. Alexeyev argued that Moscow perceived the Trump-Zelenskyy meeting as a dangerous signal, a signal that Trump might turn pressure on Russia, including sanctions and more weapons to Ukraine.
So the disinformation was a counter-pressure move.
Exactly. The disinformation about the alleged attack sought to leverage the fear of escalation. An attack on Putin means World War III, essentially, to dissuade Trump from imposing more sanctions or supplying Ukraine with more effective, long-range weapons. It was a pressure tactic designed to shift U.S. policy.
And this connects back perfectly to the CIA analysis we were talking about. The U.S. restraint on certain long-range weapons certainly reduces Ukraine's leverage at the negotiating table. Moscow wants that restraint to continue.
It absolutely does. Angela Sen pointed out that Zelensky spent much of 2025 negotiating with the U.S. just to maintain support and, critically, to increase the scope of that support. If Ukraine obtained those restrained weapons, it would dramatically increase Zelensky's leverage both on the front lines and at any future negotiation table.
So the Russian claim was a calculated attempt to justify military escalation while, at the same time, justifying the continued U.S. restraint on arms supply.
It's a two-pronged attack on the diplomatic process.
We've spent a lot of time now analyzing Russia's side of the information war, a massive, high-profile deception that failed due to a severe lack of evidence and swift intelligence counteraction. Now, let's pivot entirely to the other side of the ledger. A confirmed, successful deception operation run by Ukraine that had a very tangible, immediate financial payoff.
This contrast is perhaps the most revealing insight of this entire deep dive. It shows the sheer complexity and, frankly, the ruthlessness of the intelligence war being fought just beneath the surface of official statements and diplomatic talks.
It's a whole other battlefield.
It is. While Russia was trying to sell the world a sprawling, expensive lie about 91 drones, Ukraine was executing a successful, documented deception operation that made them $500,000 richer.
Let's unpack this astonishing twist. The Denis Kapustin ruse. Who is Kapustin, and why was he such a valuable target for a fake assassination?
Denis Kapustin, who operates under the alias White Rex, is a highly significant figure on the periphery of this conflict. He is the recognized leader of the Russian Volunteer Corps, or RVC.
And what is the RVC?
It's a right-wing, anti-Kremlin paramilitary group that is fighting alongside Ukrainian forces with the explicit goal of overthrowing Vladimir Putin.
So Russia considers him an active, high-value threat, not just a nuisance.
Oh, absolutely. The RVC is banned in Russia as a terrorist organization, and Kapustin himself had twice been sentenced in absentia to life imprisonment by Russian courts.
And his group has been active.
Very. His group is known for staging spectacular, politically damaging cross-border raids into Russia's Belgorod and Kursk regions, including capturing Russian soldiers. For Russian special services, Kapustin was a symbol of internal humiliation and a genuine, highly sought-after military target.
So the setup for the deception was simple but brilliant. Create a convincing narrative that this high-value target was dead, and then wait for the enemy to pay the bounty.
Precisely. Ukraine's GUR, the Defense Intelligence, orchestrated the fake assassination. They circulated reports, notably through the Ukrainian armed forces, claiming that Kapustin was killed by an FPV drone.
An FPV drone, a first-person view drone, the cheap, highly effective suicide drones that are so central to modern warfare.
Exactly. And they said he was killed in the southern Zaporizhia region on December 27th. This was a narrative that was technically very plausible, given the nature of the fighting on the front lines.
They didn't just circulate reports, though. They had his own organization participate in the ruse to make it totally believable to the target audience, which was the Russian intelligence community.
That's the key piece of tradecraft. To solidify the deception and exploit the Russians' confirmation bias, the RVC group itself posted a dramatic tribute on Telegram.
What did it say?
It said, "We will definitely avenge you, Dennis. Your legacy lives on." They sold the narrative hard. They even released still images of a reported drone blast and a drone headed toward a vehicle, making all the operational details look completely authentic.
This level of operational dedication is extraordinary. But what was the direct financial payoff, and how did they ensure the Russian special services actually paid out the bounty?
The payoff was immediate and substantial. The GUR operation was successful because Russian intelligence was so eager to claim credit for neutralizing such a high-value enemy that they paid an existing bounty without thoroughly verifying the kill.
They got fleeced.
They got fleeced for $500,000.
$500,000 paid out by the Russian special services directly into the hands of the very intelligence agency they are fighting against. That is a stunning example of turning the enemy's intelligence operations against them. What does this massive failure reveal about the internal intelligence structures in Russia?
Well, it reveals a significant failure of intelligence discipline and internal verification, and that's likely compounded by political pressure. For Russian security forces, a confirmed kill of Kapustin would be a huge internal victory, something worthy of promotion and praise.
They wanted it to be true.
The desire for this victory and the $500,000 bounty attached to it, it just overrode their due diligence. The GUR successfully created a perfect prepackaged narrative that allowed Russian intelligence to believe what they desperately wanted to believe.
And unlike the Valdai claim, this operation was openly confirmed and boasted about by Kiev, which demonstrates their confidence in the tradecraft.
Absolutely. The head of the GUR, General Kirilo Budanov, he confirmed the operation and publicly welcomed Kapustin back to life, offering congratulations on a successful intelligence operation that yielded direct, immediate funding for Kyiv's war efforts.
They don't just claim victory, they show you the receipt and celebrate the tactical genius.
That's a great way to put it.
The transparency of the Ukrainian intelligence community in boasting about a highly sophisticated deception, it stands in such stark contrast to the Kremlin's secretive refusal to provide any evidence for their Valdai claim.
That contrast is the perfect summary of the current state of information warfare in this conflict. On one side, you have Russia attempting a massive, high-profile deception aimed at strategic deflection and diplomatic disruption. They ask you to suspend disbelief and take their word for it. That lie failed instantly under scrutiny.
And on the other, you have Ukraine successfully running a tight, small-scale deception operation that targeted the enemy's intelligence apparatus for cold, hard cash. And they openly boast about their documented sting operation.
It just highlights the high-stakes shadow element of this conflict, where psychological operations and disinformation are central tools. The Russian false flag was designed to influence President Trump and delay arms shipments. The Ukrainian false flag was designed to fleece the Russian security apparatus for much-needed funds. Both are examples of weaponized information, but one was an expensive failure and the other was a profitable success.
The Kapustin ruse is fascinating because it provides irrefutable proof that Ukraine's intelligence services are actively engaged in these sophisticated deception operations that blur the lines between reality and fabrication. This verified track record of deception ironically makes it easier for the world to dismiss massive, unverified Russian claims like the Valdai attack.
It really demonstrates that when you're evaluating claims in this conflict, the burden of proof is heavily on Russia, particularly when the target is highly political and the timing is so diplomatically sensitive. Ukraine, in contrast, tends to confirm or at least allow credible evidence for the operations they want the world to know about, reinforcing a narrative of clever strategic action.
This entire deep dive just illustrates that the most consequential battles often extend far beyond the front lines. They are being fought in the headlines, in intelligence briefings, and in the minds of international policymakers who have to decide what information to trust and what to dismiss.
We have completed a comprehensive journey today. We've moved from a highly dramatic Russian allegation regarding 91 drones through a full-blown international intelligence rejection and concluded with the documented, successful deception operation run by Ukraine's GUR.
The narrative arc is clear. Russia launched a maximalist, unverified Claim 91 drones targeting Putin's secret home immediately following productive peace talks between the U.S. and Ukraine. The claim's objective was to serve as a diplomatic weapon, designed to harden Russia's negotiating position and dissuade the U.S. from offering further military support or imposing sanctions.
And critically, that claim collapsed almost instantly under scrutiny. Local Valdai residents heard nothing of the massive air battle, and international intelligence assessments, driven by SIGINT from the CIA, quickly concluded that Ukraine was targeting military-industrial sites near the Valdai region, not Putin himself.
And this swift rejection by the intelligence community forced a significant diplomatic reversal from the U.S. president, highlighting the power of intelligence consensus over an immediate political narrative.
It really does.
For you, the learner, the key insight here is that in these highly contested information environments, the process of finding the truth requires a deliberate three-way triangulation. You have to compare the official government statements against a highly localized, impartial witness testimony and then cross-reference both of those against sophisticated international intelligence assessments. This triangulation is the only reliable way to cut through the deliberate fog of war that's created by both sides.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought. Given that the alleged attack on Putin's residence occurred immediately after a meeting designed to broker peace, and understanding Ukraine's proven, successful use of deception to extract substantial funds from Russian special services, this raises an important question for policymakers and the public alike. In a war where information is currency and provocation is policy, does the intense, necessary focus on disproving a high-profile lie, such as the 91 drone attack, actually distract policymakers from recognizing and countering the intended strategic effect of that lie? Namely, creating a false justification for further military escalations and derailing any serious, meaningful political effort toward peace.
Something profound to mull over as you navigate the news cycle this week. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.